Yeah, forgive me. I have a moment. We do on opening the Dharma before every talk, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this. You can never hear it the same way twice. It's not the same thing. And tonight, just now, may we completely realize the reality of this world. This world, this suffering. As Ruben Habito Roshi would say, this wounded world, this wounded world. So a little verklempt, just for a moment. And, in light of the talk that I prepared for you tonight, I think it all just this earnest yearning. May we see the reality of this world. So I titled tonight's talk, Opening the Floodgates. And I know we're all sitting with what's becoming rather widely known as the polycrisis. And being practitioners as we are, we know there's no poly anything. It's been heavily in my thoughts and emotions. I'll just go there, right? Minnesota, Iran, Gaza, Ukraine, Sudan. And the sobering thought, I come from Florida. I came in today. And ice is now there. Gainesville particularly, and Orlando. And they're now listed. On that list, I just put Gainesville, Orlando on that list. So that's exponentially magnifying this collective and personal fear, anger, and ignorance that, of course, are always simmering throughout the human condition. Our fertile grounds for practice, extra fertile right now. Add to that the fact that we had snowfall in Tampa Bay, and it's colder in St. Petersburg today than it is here. Florida as a state is experiencing record-breaking cold temperatures over an unparalleled duration of time. Somebody asked me about the falling iguanas, if they were going to be okay. And the answer is no one knows, because normally they freeze and fall for just a couple of days, not 3 weeks. So we're entering new territory. It's throwing our subtropical ecology into a tailspin. Just 1.5 years into the recovery after double hurricanes did the same thing. So like the humanitarian crises that are happening globally, there are similar climate stories throughout the whole planet. In addition to the fear and the anger and the ignorance, those 3 poisons that we identify, there's this collective emotion that's settling. It's grief. I subscribe to all kinds of various newsletters and whatnot, and sometimes have time to read them. And one of them is Jack Kornfield. I was just reading through his latest newsletter, and one line caught me. He said, "Our inner climate is our outer climate." What a pointer. There's no inside or outside. As long as people are steeped in division due to this illusion of separation, our blue and green planet will feel the repercussions. And as our Zazen shows us so generously, it's just one aching body. Thinking right now of the buck. The door to cause and effect this Hakuin Song of Zazen exclaims, is thrown open when we even taste a glimpse of this reality, this one body. So sitting with all of this, things come up. That's the beauty of our practice. Things just like, or as Yamada Ryonoshi would say, come down. Just giving yourself over to things exactly as they are in the silence and the stillness. And suddenly this old sad hymn started churning in my head. It wouldn't leave me for a couple of days. So I've never adopted any religion. I've never gone to church or synagogue or mosque growing up. But I did hear Sweet Honey in the Rock sing this Rastafarian version of this hymn many years ago. It's called By the Rivers of Babylon. You know it? Yeah. Does anybody know it? Oh, Maria. It's so beautiful. I never knew what the lyrics meant, but apparently they come from Psalm 137 in the Bible. And I want to sing it. Should we sing it? Yeah?
We'd like that, yeah.
Okay, all right. Please join me if you know it. And just see if you can feel the lament. Yeah. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, and there we wept when we remembered Zion. All the wicked carried us away, captivity required of us a song. How can we sing King Alpha's song in a strange land? So let the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, override. The term Zion, in its purest form, authentic form, represents the feeling of home or belonging. King Alpha would be Jah, or God, and the hymn laments the stifling feeling of being so utterly displaced and oppressed that one no longer feels like themselves. They've lost their true self, and hence joy and song cannot come forth. I mean, how completely different from our Zen chant, Hakuin Song of Zazen. So let's, for comparison's sake, look at a few lines of that. The first part talks about our practice and then what can come of it in the subsequent stanzas. It says, and when we turn inward and prove our true nature, that true self is no self, our own self is no self, we go beyond ego and past clever words. Then the gate to the oneness of cause and effect is thrown open. Not two and not three, straight ahead runs the way. Our form now being no form, in going and returning we never leave home. Our thought now being no thought. Our dancing and songs are the voice of the Dharma. How vast the heaven of boundless samadhi, how bright and transparent the moonlight of wisdom. What is there outside us? What is there we lack? Nirvana is openly shown to our eyes. This earth where we stand is the pure lotus land, and this very body, the body of Buddha. So I'd like to think that while the mourners were weeping with broken hearts, in their exile by the rivers of Babylon, feeling that utter sadness, that some of them broke open so completely that they came to Hakuin's realization and celebration of oneness, interbeing, belonging, know oneself, versus the multi-generational insistence on getting back to some geographical place called Zion, claiming it as their birthright and theirs alone, and locking all of the gates. When the gate to cause and effect is thrown open, this very land and this very body are not two separate things. And they're home. So this is sort of where I want to enter, just feeling this sense, even if you don't clearly see it. We had our monthly small group meeting of the Earth Awareness training that Valerie and I are doing. It's a remarkable, vast, endless exploration of this grief and this joy, interbeing. Our facilitator, Susie Harrington, encouraged us to change our more common narrative of finding refuge or peace in our practice, and in this case, our practice in a natural environment, really kind of honing in on the climate crisis. She encouraged us to not look at it as a refuge that's separate or outside of our normal and very stressful lives and our current state of worry and anxiousness. Instead, she implored that we see ourselves as nature and thus come home in mutual recognition and relationship. So in terms of the gate metaphor that's now coming up quite a bit, there's no fence separating our individual suffering self from the world. We heal together because we are one tissue. And to realize this dissolves any concepts of a gate. Wow. How lovely to have the Mumonkan, the gateless gate, to explore among the entire canon that we have gifted to us. Because there's a perception of an endless obstacle, sort of a series of obstacles maybe in our lives, locked gates that keep us out or in, or barriers that we can erect at will to fix things as we like them, right in place. Fix and fix, I mean that both ways, right? Nothing to fix, and yet this sense of wanting fixity. They're the scaffolding, as Valerie calls it, of who we think we are, erected as outer structures. My property, my homeland, not yours. And inner limitations are also part of this picture. I belong to this group, and you belong to that one. It gives us an illusory sense of maybe fixity that we were talking about, or belonging, with the caveat being that it is illusory. So when we don't belong, and when things inevitably change, we suffer. So what do we do? How do we open these no gates that feel so real? How do we open them up? Can we even open them at all? So as it turns out, we have lots of wonderful koans to help us explore these questions, and I'd like to turn to two. The first one is Case 9 in the Hekiganroku, or Blue Cliff Record, and it's called, appropriately, Joshu's 4 gates. It's a very short koan. A monk asked Joshu, "What is Joshu?" And Joshu answered, "East gate, west gate, north gate, south gate." End of case. So just a little bit of background on this koan. When we think of the great master Joshu, we think of Joshu's dog, the Mu koan, that many of us are very familiar with. As it turns out, it's also the name of Joshu's city. Or they called it in the old days Joshu Castle, but it was an entire city, kind of shaped like a square, hence the 4 gates for each, I suppose, wall that enclosed the city. Zen masters in those days were often named after the city where their monastery was located. So that leaves us with the question, what's the monk asking Master Joshu about? Is he asking about the city of Joshu or about Master Joshu himself? Or, as so many of our koans really implore us to see, is he asking about himself? Who am I? And that brings to mind another question. Is there a difference between any of those questions? Maybe it's just one question. And Master Joshu responds without hesitation. I'm guessing he put his arms out. And that's a great response. Because we said, the city of Joshu is square-shaped and has these barriers, right, or gates. So do we. We have a skin barrier. I suppose it's more of a membrane, but it feels like a barrier when we live our lives. Yamada Konroshi gives the ultimate pointer when he talks about Joshu's response, whether it be referring to the city of Joshu, Joshu, the master, the monk, you, me. He says, enter anywhere you like. There's nothing inside. So how can we enter to see this if the gate is heavy and locked? And right now I'm speaking about any possible gate. Our Zazen reveals a deeper truth. Things as they are already completely, totally free and open. Exactly as they are. As the gateless gate points, there's no gate at all, but we sure feel like there's one, and we will never get through. Nothing will be able to break them if our perceptions are telling us this. Nothing. The gate itself is free, and thus, so are you. In other words, like our Bodhisattva vows say, we're already saved. But our delusions, which really are just our deeply ingrained story that reality is only what we've been conditioned to think it is, they keep us from seeing it. And I know I've talked about this in past talks, that's okay. We have this wonderful amygdala that's doing its best to protect us. Thank you, amygdala. That's also free. Free and wide open to function and help delude us. And yet we have this wonderful ability to practice and even start to get these glimpses of freedom. And we start to surrender our small self even as I say these words, we're not doing anything at all. It's just practicing. It's surrendering our small self. Our small self is it too. It's going into the boundless, empty infinite that isn't fixed at all. And the suffering of the world, the suffering in ourselves as the world and vice versa, becomes poignant. I remember Yamada Ryon Roshi a couple of years ago here in Naz, last time it was here, I remember him saying, oh, if only Putin and those other people would learn Zazen. He said there'd be no more wars. So that brings me to something that I'm coming up with a lot with our brand new folks in our second Florida group that started, beautiful people that are coming in with this, wanting to find relief because of this sort of elevated state of the world right now. They want what they call the Zen equanimity. We want to be peaceful all the time in the face of this raging world. And I'm like, okay, let's talk. This freedom, this equanimity. I love what Ruben says, it's not a fix, it's better than that, right? What does this equanimity really mean? And that brings me to the second koan that I wanted to sort of integrate into this exploration tonight. It's 15C of our Miscellaneous Koans. It's a question. It's one of those beautiful, beautiful questions. Why is it that the crimson lines of a clearly enlightened person never cease to flow? So these crimson lines are our tears. And, we cry forever. Tears and blood are like an endless nectar of aliveness. Our tears and blood inseparable from the tears and blood of everything, of all creation, all the time, right now. A deeper dive also reveals that our endless tears are also that milk that Dogen speaks of. They're also the 4 vows of the Bodhisattva that we'll do tonight. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to free them or save them. Delusions, they're inexhaustible, and I vow to end them. The Dharma gates are boundless, and I vow to enter them. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. So this freeing or saving, already free. Free in our desperation, in our grief, in our fortification, and ultimately our freely flowing compassion. There's no one to free. It's already done with every gesture, every endless tear. I vow to save them. Already saved, gates freely entered, even as we rail against them. That's it. As we desperately look for a key. There was a story that Valerie told our group years and years ago, and I know she's told it since, but I'll just never forget that evening. My son calls it a clock moment, these moments that will just stay with you. She told a story about the shofar, which I'm a very bad Jew. I actually don't know a lot about shofars. But I do know that it's a very sacred ritual and ceremony that when you blow the shofar, you imagine, I can't remember what they're called. If anyone here practices, you can tell me. But there's scripture. They're deep pontifications on truth, on reality, as told by the Kabbalah. And you don't say it out loud, but you before you do the shofar, you remember them in your heart, you say them to yourself. And so therefore when you blow, all of that, like the tenzo, all of the practice coming forward in the nutriment of food, all of that truth is coming out in the nutriment of the sound. So the head rabbi had asked a senior student, I think, who had become an assistant teacher, assistant rabbi, to do the shofar, and told him, this is very, very important. You must take this very, very seriously. The state of all the world depends on it. No pressure at all. And you must learn everything you can learn, and you must know, what to do before you blow the shofar. And he did. He took it out. He took it upon himself, partially with great worry and nervousness because of the pressure, and partially with great excitement because of, the great meaning and honor of being able to do this ceremony. And he had all the parts written down so he could refer to them before each blow. And he tucked it in his pocket. And then the great moment came, and he was ready. And he reached into his pocket. Then he reached into his other pocket. Somehow the piece of paper had disappeared. And he was heartbroken. He didn't know what to do. So in his great misery, he did the only thing he could do. And he blew the shofar. And when it was done, the rabbi came to him and said, that was beautiful. It was so beautiful. And the assistant rabbi said, no, it wasn't. I failed. I failed my task. And he told him what happened. So the head rabbi responded with a story. He said, in the king's palace, there are many gates and many doors, leading to many halls and chambers. The palace keepers have great rings, imagine those old big rings, holding many keys, each of which opens a different door. But there's a master key that opens all the doors. The caveat, that's what they're called. Each part that you're supposed to read is called, I don't think I'm pronouncing it right, caveat? Caveat, was it? Caveat, thank you. Caveat. Each unlocks a door, right? And accesses another chamber in the supernal worlds. But there's one key, one master key. It unlocks all the doors and can open the innermost chambers of the divine palace, even if you don't have the kavanah. That master key is a broken heart. It kind of reminds me of a book many of you might have read. If you're lucky, your heart will break. The third part of the Four Noble Truths said, the fourth part, the enlightened way is unsurpassable, and I vow to embody it. How can we not? Already enlightened, and as the Four Noble Truths tell us, there's a way to this enlightenment that is insurpassable, only for the fact that there's no thing called an enlightened way and no one to be enlightened. So how can anything be surpassed at all? That perfectly broken heart, independent of covenants, already done such freedom. So thinking about the dynamic state of the world, thinking about some new students who've come to get nice and steady, figure it out, to get it right because everything's going wrong. I mean, I know we can all relate to these feelings. And maybe just a reminder that we don't have to get it right, whatever that means. This equanimity is not about discovering that we've always been unconditionally free. I'm sorry, it is about discovering that we've always... That's what happens when I try to read my computer with... Yeah. It's about discovering that we've always been unconditionally free, even as we mourned for the perception that we're anything but. And just tasting that freedom. What a practice. Even as we grieve the calamities of this suffering world. So I think I've just enough time to tell you about the sweaty palm story. Has anybody ever heard this story before? It's very short. It's been a great guide for me. There was a master, I've heard it through several, there's Sufi story, there's a Buddhist version, there's a Hindu version, and then apparently a modern version of a master who was hosting either a wedding or a funeral, depending on which version you hear. And he had to host great dignitaries at his monastery. And he pulled it off. He did a great job. It was a wonderful, beautiful, moving wedding or funeral. And at the end, his students came to him and said, you know, you are truly a master. That was perfect. And he said, no, I'm not. Not at all. The whole time my palms were sweaty. I've got more work to do. My equanimity is not there. So I guess about 5-6 years later, he had to host another big event, a wedding or a funeral, and great dignitaries and important people were coming. And once again, he pulled it off, and it was beautifully done, and people were greatly moved, and his students said to him, well, apparently you've mastered everything, because that was even better than last time. How does it feel not to have sweaty palms this time? He said, are you kidding? They were sweatier than ever before. It just didn't bother me as much this time. In fact, Henry, I remember you saying in a talk, I think somebody asked if you're a hot mess, and you said, no, I'm not a hot mess anymore. How nice that must be. And I believe you said something like, oh, it just doesn't bother me as much anymore. Great. East Gate, West Gate, North Gate, and South Gate. See, these are not just gates, though an ordinary gate will do, but so would a table, a computer, sweaty palms, a failed goal at being peaceful, a critical vote at the ballot box, an ICE protest. But make no mistake, they're not just gates, they're floodgates. And they're you. That's one floodgate. And of course, if we look closer, no gate at all. If it's a floodgate, we can allow ourselves to be swept away into the and as the crying, laughing, wondering, grieving, helping of the world, the beauty, the pain, the song, the lament. Just you as you are, the world as it is. We can throw our arms open and we can enter here. We can enter here, East Gate. This is it, right here. We can enter here, West Gate. We can enter North Gate and we can enter South Gate. And while we're entering, we don't have to stop the tears. We don't have to stop the joy. Peace will find you when we are willing to lean into this gorgeous, frankly, reality, this gorgeous dynamism. So to conclude, maybe hopefully bring it kind of all together, you are not by the river of Babylon. You are not in a strange land. You are the river and the land and the mountains and the frozen swamps and climate change and wars and rage and protests. You're also the raven that croaks in the piñon tree, the warmth of hot water and lemon. Is there anything we can't include? And that's when it happens. The compassion arises when we start to see ourselves everywhere we turn. This remarkable compassion that identifies exactly what this is. Your home. And now you're free, totally free, to stand up from our cushions and do what's yours to do, to soak this one wide world in our practice. That's our collective awakening. And that's our love. Capital L. Love. And that's what I've got for you tonight. I'm grateful. It's a joy beyond words to be here. And so we call this our mother's ship. Mountain Cloud, our mother's ship. So I love this opportunity to share and sit together this evening and always. Thank you so much for your practice.